Yes, initially with the backpacker murders, that's when everything sort of was coming to the fore. I started to have dreams about the two English girls, and I was working at Fairfax Community Newspapers at the time, and I kept getting all these messages, and at first I just thought it was just too much of it being on the television and in the newspapers because we were kind of flooded with everything back then. And then I started to see things before they happened.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. Hello and welcome to another episode of Things You Can't Unhear. Now, as I've been working to build my sense of intuition and mastering my own intuitive thoughts over the years, I've been incredibly intrigued with people with a psychic ability. So when I went out in my search to interview someone on this topic, I wanted to find the best of the best in Australia, someone who would share information that even skeptics couldn't deny. And it was then I was introduced to Debbie Malone, a psychic, clairvoyant and medium who has repeatedly been named Psychic of the Year. Debbie assists police Australia-wide to bring new light on unsolved murder investigations and missing persons cases. The information Debbie receives has been very successful in providing new lines of inquiry, criminal profiles and identikits of perpetrators. Due to Debbie's mediumship abilities, she can make contact with deceased victims and provide insight into what, how, when, and why a crime was committed. Debbie has actually seen and sensed spirit since she was a child, and throughout her life has experienced numerous near-death experiences. And at the age of 28, she had a miscarriage. Now, these life experiences of hers heightened and brought to the forefront her unique psychic abilities once and for all. And since that time, Debbie has provided the link for thousands of people to communicate with their loved ones who have passed on, as well as providing insights to police inquiries and investigations. So if you've always been curious to know what goes on in the mind of psychics and mediums, you will love listening to Debbie as much as I did.
I'd love to know a little bit about how you got into your psychic work and the journey that it took to get here. Can you tell us what life was like as a young child?
Yeah, I had a near-death experience at 3, then another one when I was 13. So all up now, I've had 7 of them. I've had a lot of illness in my life, and through that it sort of opened me up. And when I was younger, I didn't really want to know about it. I used to see things in my room, and now I understand what orbs, which are spirit energies, we can now photograph them on our phones and cameras. But when I was a child, they used to be floating around in my room, and I used to hear a lot of voices. And my mum just said I was doing it for attention, but I was actually seeing people in my bedroom.
Orbs, you can actually photograph them? What do you see when you photograph them?
They look like spheres, look like a full moon. Sometimes you get ectoplasm, and you can also get full-bodied spirits that look like living people, which I have captured in the past.
Wow. Okay. So you were a young girl and you were seeing a lot of these things and you were trying to push it away.
Yeah, I did everything I could to push it away. And when I was 13, I had my appendix out. And then after that, everything kind of changed because my heart stopped and they couldn't explain what had happened. And I remember floating in the room, and I was sort of on the corner of the roof looking down at my body, and all the doctors and nurses were running around trying to revive me. And then in the morning when I woke up, they sort of said, we need to do some tests. Your heart stopped. And I thought it was a dream. And from that point onwards, I always felt a bit different. And I remember Raymond J. Moody's book, Life After Life, came out, and I borrowed that from the school library and read it. And then I kind of just shut it all down because I felt a lot different after that point in life.
Were you frightened? Were you scared of these feelings and these visions?
Yeah, I was. I didn't really see and hear spirit like I do now. I could see things in my room at night, and my grandfather, who I was extremely close to, died when I was 15 of throat and lung cancer, and he used to come and visit me, and he used to sort of glide into the room and sit on the bed, and he wouldn't talk to me, but he'd just sit there, and used to feel him around me a lot. And but because he was the first person in my life that had ever died, I kind of accepted that. But then after, as I got older, I had a diving accident when I was 19. I wanted to be a scuba diver, and I burst my over window in my right ear, and in that ear I have tinnitus. And then as things progressed, that's the year I hear spirit in.
Wow. So when you were telling your parents that you could hear and see all of these things, were they supportive of that? Did they believe you?
No, not at all. They just thought that that I just had to get over being scared of the dark, and they didn't want to know about it. They kept saying I was doing it for attention, but I wasn't. I was absolutely terrified.
Well, that you've proven that now, that you weren't doing it for attention, right? Kids do say things. I've got kids and they say things that sometimes seem so out there that you just like, that can't be true, you sort of shut that down. But if it's actually happening to you and it's something that you're dealing with as a child, I'm sure it would be absolutely intense.
It was, and I have 3 adult children now, but when my middle son, I have 2 boys and a girl, and my middle son, I was pregnant with him when the psychic abilities really kicked in, because I had a miscarriage between him and his older brother. And from that point onwards, that's when I started working on the backpacker murders. But he was always a very nervy sort of a child, and he used to talk about men in his room with arms and legs missing and nails in their heads. And then we discovered when he went to his first Anzac Day service at school that those men were soldiers. And when I've been writing, I've written 4 books, but when I was writing my last book, we discovered that he was a soldier in his past life, and his past life kind of found him, but that he was the soldier that he was seeing. So it's been interesting. So all 3 of the kids, they all do have their own psychic abilities.
So you're obviously a lot more supportive with your children than you had when you were growing up.
Yeah, definitely. But I think back in the time when I was, growing up, the things that we talk about now were not open. And also, I remember when I was trying, because it's been nearly 29 years of me really working with my psychic abilities. But back in the beginning, tried to go to a bookshop to find books, and then that was always out the back of the shop under the counter, and it was called the occult. Now it's nothing like that, so it's a big difference.
It is. But do you think your family in the past had this psychic ability as well, and they just did not channel it, or they were too afraid to channel it?
So my father's mother died. That they came from Tassie. And her sister, they used to go and do flower readings at the spiritualist church in the 40s, which would have been very, very rare. And after my nana died, things started to change as well, because she used to tell us that we had to be careful, that there would be a hole in the sky and we had to throw all the aerosol cans out because it was going to affect the environment. And then now we look back, and that was when the ozone layer, it's to do with that. And she always told us that we should bank with St George Building Society, because they were going to be one of the biggest banks in Australia, which they ended up being a bank, not a building society. And she said Paul Keating would be Prime Minister one day, because she lived in Bankstown, where he was a local politician. So we discovered that she wasn't just making up things. She actually was pretty intuitive herself. I just wish I knew that when she was alive and we could have spoken about it.
I want to go back to you saying you had 7 near-death experiences. Do you feel as though that these near-death experiences occurred so that you could build on your psychic ability?
Oh, definitely. I believe that's the case. When I was 3, I had bronchial pneumonia, and I nearly died then. But I think that's probably most to see all the things in my room. Then when I was 13, when I had my appendix out, that's when it was quite, a big time, and the time where you remember things a lot more. But in my late 20s, early 30s, it's when I have anaesthetic. The anaesthetic does take me to the other side, but I've had OBEs, and as recent as July this year, I had another near-death experience when I had to have some tests in hospital, and I had an allergic reaction to a PET scan I had to have, and it actually took me up, and I was very, very well aware of that. So, but it was good, because whatever they thought was wrong with me actually came back as, after being a positive result, came back as a negative. So that was good. Something nice happened then.
Unbelievable. So you say the anesthetics takes you to the other side. So are you in a different realm then? Are you in control of anything with your mind, or are you just visualizing?
I think you do see things. And my middle son, Blake, who I was pregnant with when a lot of this really came to the fore, he's now had 2 anesthetics for with knee operations, and he said it's opened him up even more as well. So it has affected him in the same manner. And I don't know. I think part of it is, yes, to open you up. I think it's also to help people, so that I can help people understand that there is life after life, and when we die, we're not just dead and buried. So I think part of it's that. But yeah, it's you do go into another realms, and I think there are a number of different realms with different areas, with spirit and angels, spirit guides, and even ET. You know, there's a whole lot of other things, and I think they vibrate on different frequencies to what we do. And that's why sometimes we can enter these other frames or time frames.
It's so much to get our head around, isn't it, when we're taught such the opposite in our lives from the beginning. And it's just I mean, a lot of us can feel that there's more, and there's definitely something else that exists, but to see it would be another experience altogether. And when you had this you had one particular experience where you actually passed, didn't you? Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you saw and how you felt during that time?
Yeah, my daughter was 1, my other son was 3, my other son was 7, and I had to have a major operation. And after the operation, they gave me a morphine drip for pain. But prior to having the operation, I had a vision that I was going to die. So I got a will made the night before, and just as they were about to put me under, I was actually crying, and then the doctor said, "What's wrong with you? You're being a bit hormonal, are you, dear?" And I went, "No, actually, I'm going to the light." And he just looked at me, he says, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Why are you saying that?" And I said, "Because I had a vision." And I said, "Actually, I'm a psychic." And he says, "Oh, okay." And he says, "So are you going to hang around and help us?" And I said, "No, just make sure you put me back together, okay?" And I remember when they put in the anaesthetic in, the doctor's looking at me, and he just went, his face drained white when that happened, when I said I was going to die. And then afterwards, I had an allergic reaction to the morphine, and it overdosed me. So when I went there, first of all, it was quite horrific. I had snakes crawling all under my skin and all these strange things happening. And I kept telling the nurse I was going to die. And she came over and said, "Not on my shift, too much paperwork." And we started laughing, and then she sort of went away again. And then things started to go wrong, and then my heart stopped. So she ran back in and ripped the drip out and tried to bring me round. And then it was just such a weird experience. And even what I saw, so the movie Contact for me, that it's a really old movie now, but Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey are in it, and that when I saw that movie, that was what I saw. And I actually went to this other realm, and it was such a peaceful, loving experience, and it's something I'll never forget. And it was weird. I felt myself raised up into the sky, and it was like I was on a roller coaster, and I was getting shaken around quite a lot. And then you're getting sucked really quickly, and then there was like a black hole, and there was like a tunnel of light at the end of it, and there was other people going in the tunnel with me. And then I sort of landed in this meadow, and the grass was a little bit longer, and there was a bit of a breeze, and the grass was really green. It was swaying back and forth, and there was a queue of people in front of me, and there was like a privet hedge with a little gate in the middle, and all these people were going through the gateway. And then when it was my turn, I was told I couldn't go through, and I was a bit cranky because everyone else had gone in, and I don't like to cut queues and things. And they said, no, turn around, you can't come in. And I remember seeing all these people looking at me, and they were nice.
Sorry, so who said that to you? Do you remember who that was? Was it a voice? Was it a person?
Yeah, it was a male and a female just standing there. I don't remember who they are now, but at the time they were really very comforting, and everything, the colours were much more vivid than what they are here, and everything just seemed so perfect, and everyone was really happy. And then they said to me, "No, turn around, turn around." It was like I was in the sky, and I had to look down, and I could see my husband with my 3 children. He had my daughter in his arms, and my little boys were standing beside him, and they were all going, "Where's mummy, where's mummy?" And he said, "Oh no, mummy's not coming back now. Mummy's up there, she's up in heaven." And he was pointing up to the sky, and I could see him. Next thing I felt myself dropping back in, and I woke back up in the bed with everything attached to me and in a lot of pain. And then I kind of realised that I was back.
How long were you gone?
hard to explain. It could have been a minute, could have been 5 minutes. I don't know. I think it was, the thing is I've discovered with spirit, there's no time and space. So sometimes on the earth realm, we're governed by clocks and time, where over there, time doesn't really have the same sort of measurements. So I could have been gone out an hour, but then you don't know. It's just, it's weird.
Did you know in medical terms how long you were gone?
I think there was a few minutes. Remember the nurse, after she sort of brought me back, she couldn't believe what was happening. And even after that, because I was only supposed to be in hospital for 2 or 3 days, and then I got an infection, and after that, though, I could see into my body, and I could see I had a blood clot, and then said to the doctor, I can see this big black spot. And he said, where? And I pointed to where it was, and then they gave me a pelvic CAT scan, and when they did, it was the same size and spot as what I said. And they said, oh, you should be all right. They let me go home, and then I got rushed back in with an infection again. And so from that point onwards, things changed. But the anaesthetist, he came to speak to me and asked me what did I see, because he said he'd only had 2 other patients tell him they were going to die, and they both did. So he said that for me having, what he thought was a routine operation, I should have been okay. But he wanted to know what was there and what I saw.
So the doctors knew that you were a psychic when you went in and when you had that anaesthetic and mentioned all these things?
Well, they didn't really know until I was on the operating table, because back then I wasn't really accepting of my gifts. I knew I had them, but I used to be a graphic designer. I had my own business, and I never wanted to be a psychic. I wouldn't go and have readings. It wasn't something I ever did. So for me to be the skeptic and then actually, be on the other side of all of that, it's been a big transformation in my life.
Absolutely. How do you deal with skeptics? Because you've been one. It would probably help a lot.
Yeah, I think it does. I think you always need to be mindful of how you convey any information to anybody, because it can change their lives, in a positive or a negative manner. And there are a lot of people out there that are psychic or say they're psychic, and then they may not be that great at their job as well. But that being said, I think all of us are born psychic. We all have our own gifts, whether it's our gut feeling, our intuition, our inner knowing. We get messages through dream state, or we might hear our loved ones speak to us, when they've passed. So I think we all have the ability to tap into it. Doesn't all mean we're all going to be a psychic medium and all do readings. It's like everybody can, we can all run, but we're not all going to be Olympic runners either. So I think some people are better at it than other people. But I think if we use it on a daily basis, for gut feeling, for safety, or we're worried about a loved one, or we think about them and they call us, well, that's part of your psychic ability kicking in. It's
like an intuition, isn't it?
Definitely. And a lot of the time people say they've got a gut feeling about something, and when they go against it, then they realise that if they had followed the first impression, they would have been okay. But, it's like, oh, no, that won't happen, or I can trust that person when you meet them, but there's something in there, in your tummy or your heart chakra sort of saying, no, it just doesn't feel right. I always think that's a warning. It's like our spirit guides and guardian angels. They're there to help us and guide us.
How do you personally receive the messages?
I hear them, see them, feel them. I can channel them. I work on police cases. I did one on Friday where I went under hypnosis and became the victim, so we could discover what had happened and where this person is. Now, this is an old case from 1971, but I sort of see all of it. The unfortunate thing for me, though, is that I feel their pain. So whatever they've gone through, I can feel. Or if I'm doing a reading in person, the person I'm speaking to, say their father died of a heart attack, I'll feel the heart attack in my body. Or
wow.
They've got eye problems or knee problem, I feel that in my body as well.
So that would be very draining on you physically and mentally.
It is. People don't understand. People just think you dial a dead person and, you just go and tap into them and it's all fine. They don't understand. I think that's probably over the years, I think it does affect your health because it is quite a big drain, and you've got to lift your vibration to tune into the other realms. To do a reading for an hour is probably as long as you can do it. I mean, I can do more for that one person, but it's very draining for the spirit as well as myself.
Can you turn it on or off?
I'm pretty well turned on all the time. So I always have things around me.
And if you choose to have a break and just recharge your energy, is that an option for you, or is it always just still coming through?
Well, it's there all the time, but I'll choose to put my earphones on and listen to music, or I'll go to the gym or swim, or I go paddleboarding in summer. So that's kind of my release. So I can kind of not have them there all the time, because otherwise, if I don't work with it, they won't leave me alone. They're there all the time. Like I can't, if you're standing in a queue, group of people around you, and had an elderly lady in front of me and her dead husband, he wouldn't stop tapping me on the shoulder, telling me to tell her he was there. So, they can see your light and they want to get a message across, and they will use whatever way, shape or form for you to give it to someone.
Did you tell her he was there?
I did. I was careful how I did it. When I did tell her, she was extremely excited, and he was telling me that he knew she'd gone to Egypt. They were supposed to go together, but he showed me that he knew that she took him to Egypt with her in her suitcase. She took a photograph, and instead of him going, she took her son. And there was a whole lot of things I told her, and she couldn't believe it. And she sort of said to me, "Can you wait for me after we get out of here? I need to speak to you a bit further." So yeah, he was pretty excited that I spoke to her. But I try to be mindful and not just walk up to random people and go, "Hey, by the way, I've got your dead person here," because it's
Unless they're being incredibly persistent, like he must have been.
He was. Yeah.
I know you assist police to bring new light on unsolved murder investigations. Can you tell us your involvement in the backpacker murders and how you assist police?
Yes, initially with the backpacker murders, that's when everything sort of was coming to the fore. And I started to have dreams about the girls, the two English girls, and I was working in a local like Fairfax community newspapers at the time. And I kept getting all these messages, and then at first I just thought it was just too much of it being on the television and the radio and the newspapers, because we were kind of flooded with everything back then. And then I started to see things before they happened. And I told one of the journalists, and he said, "Well, maybe we should do a story about you." So they called me Julia. They gave me a fake name. And they asked me about what area or demographics I wanted the newspaper story to go. And I said I wanted it to go in the MacArthur Advertiser, because that's where I thought that the murderer lived, and he did. And through that, his girlfriend, Shalinda Hughes, actually contacted the paper. So I sort of had contact with her through that, and we'd sort of communicate. And I would write the visions down and give them to police. And I had 2 detectives assigned to me at the time. But it was a whole lot of learning period too for me to understand what was happening, because sometimes you'd see the past, sometimes you'd see the future, sometimes the present. But I had to send all the information on. And after that case kind of shut down, I thought, oh, that's it, I won't have to do this anymore. And then it started again, and then I've just been doing cases ever since.
So what other cases have you worked on?
Claremont serial killing, I went under hypnosis and I did a drawing of him, and now he's been arrested. I did a drawing of what he looked like when he offended, and then I did another one of an aged version, and he looks pretty similar to who they've arrested. Worked on so many. The Bob Chappell Sue Neil Fraser case, which has been in high profile in the news and on 60 Minutes. Lynn Dawson, the Murphy's Creek murders.
And so what information have you provided for some of these that's really sort of gotten them over the line?
What I do is I'm like a profiler, so I can do identikits of what the perpetrators look like. I can give them information, tell them what the victim went through, how they died, locations they were taken, information about the murderer and what they look like and where they are. Like with the Sue Neil Fraser case, from the very beginning, I always saw there was 3 people involved. There was a young female, a young male, and an older male, and no one believed me. They all thought that it was rubbish. And it ended up, I work with a very gifted retired detective from Victoria named Colin McLaren. And Colin worked on the case anyway. He found those 3 people, and they did exist. So that's still been ongoing. And worked on the Mr. Cruel case, worked on the Phillip Island murders. I don't know, there's so many different cases that I've worked on. I've probably lose count of them. There's a young man missing from Byron Bay at the moment, Theo Hayes, and I'm waiting for some items to be sent to me to actually tune in to see what happened to him.
The Mr. Cruel case is so prominent for me because I remember being a teenager around that time. How did you help in that?
I went on a show called Sensing Murder, and then that case always haunted me. They actually cut me from the case because they said I was wrong, and because I went on hypnosis for about 3 hours, and I was really frustrated because I knew I was right. So I wrote about it in my book, Never Alone. And now someone has contacted me, and it's been ongoing. And I think he's the murderer, and I'm trying to get something done with it. It's been very frustrating, though. And sometimes it's not the police officers' fault either. I think a lot of these cases are cold cases, so as time goes by, it's not their main priority. They're off doing their other cases, and because a lot of these cold cases might be 20, 30 years old, so they just get pushed to the side, and there's many, many cold cases. So I think it's resources that causes the problem. And officers move, and then evidence is different. We're all on the internet now, but information was stored, handwritten. So I think it's probably the filing of the information was probably not as well handled as what it should be. It's very difficult. Like, there's a twin girl that went missing with her friend down in Wollongong area, and I've been working on that case for some time. And I did identikits, but the police didn't release them for 60 years. And when they were released, people have now come forward, and another woman was kidnapped in the same area, and she got away, where the other two girls are missing and have not been found. But we sort of know where who these men are now, that people have come to light about them. But it's then the next stage, what do we do? How do we get them to go further with it? So I think the technology is great with Facebook and the internet, because a lot of people can start to talk, and even with podcasts such as yourself, and Instagram, all this technology and the internet, we can link up with people we never had the opportunity to do so before.
It's right. It spreads your voice further. So is psychic work becoming more prominent in police investigation?
Overseas, it's huge. In Australia, they'll also tell you that they don't work with psychics, but they do.
Yes.
So on record, no. Off record, yes.
Yeah.
And it depends on the office, Some officers may come of their own accord, and they'll ask me to work with them, while others will say no, they don't work with them. I was asked to work on a case down in Young, and the officer said that he wanted me to help, but if I found the body, then he was going to arrest me because I must have done it. I've never been to Young in my life, so I told him I wasn't going to waste my time.
Yeah, there's got to be a fine line there, right?
There definitely is. Well, when I first worked on the backpacker murders, then they wanted to know everything about me, wanted to know my doctor's names, wanted to know if I had mental illness, wanted to know, where was I on certain dates, because I was starting to know things before they were happening. So, again, you have that issue where they think that you could have been part of it. And a lot of the time people do come forward in cases. You see there's a lot of men that are on the news and their wife is missing and they're crying and saying, oh, please bring her home, and then they end up being the killer anyway. So a lot of people will do that, or will be at the murder scene when they're looking for someone, even though they're the one that did it.
That's true. Now, I know you came into this later on in your life. It hasn't always been the case. Were your extended friends and family accepting of your new ability?
It was very difficult. It was very difficult for my husband to even understand it, because, I'd wake up with nightmares or know things. And he'd just say, well, you weren't like that when we got married. Can you stop it? And I was like, I can't. And I think he's accepting now. And also because our children are psychic. So he's the odd one out in the family. And
he's probably quite happy about that.
Yeah, we've got to have one grounded person. My eldest one's pretty grounded as well, but he's a remedial massage therapist, and through his massage he's now opening up, and things his clients are telling him they're seeing things when he gives them massages, and he's sort of going, whoa, mum, this is a bit crazy. So it's interesting.
Tell us about the miscarriage that you had that really spiraled this further.
I was only 6 to 8 weeks pregnant, so I wasn't really, it wasn't a full term or close to full term baby, but from that miscarriage, everything just opened up. And then when my youngest child, who's my only daughter, Shannon, when she was a baby, she used to see her sister. So my daughter's Shannon Brooke Malone, and her sister's name would have been Brooke Malone if she had have survived. And when she was little, she used to talk about her and want to play with her and, see her in the house. So that indicated to me that when we die, even though we have miscarriages, or say somebody is a stillborn, then they grow up, they don't stay stuck at that stage of 6 to 8 weeks, or at 1 or 2, they do keep growing on the other side, so their other siblings can see them. So that's why sometimes if you've got little ones and they're telling you there's other people in the house, then that might have been a baby that was lost or just an invisible friend even.
Wow, that's a lot to think about. To think that a miscarried child can grow is quite comforting, I'm sure, to a lot of people out there who have experienced miscarriage.
Yeah, definitely. And I even think with stillborns, it's quite it's a hard topic, because a lot of people, even though I know when I had the miscarriage, it's like, oh, you've got one healthy child, you're lucky, because I was told I'd never have children, so I was really blessed to have the ones I have. And but people sort of say, don't worry, just have another one. It's not like you just go and buy another baby. And I think to being a mum and then having full-term children and having ones that don't make it to, or having one that didn't make it to full-term, it's kind of an enigma, because people just don't talk about it. But you've still felt that, depending on how far along you are, you sort of feel that there's hormonal changes and at times, depending how far, physical changes. And, when you fall pregnant, it's like at the end of that 9-month period, your life's going to change and you're going to have a new little being as part of your family. And then when that doesn't come to pass, it's quite a hard thing to go through. And a lot of people just don't talk about it. And I think it's quite emotional for females. I mean, of course it is for males, but I think being the mother and carrying the child, I think that's really quite difficult.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And especially if it happens more than once or twice, which is quite common as well.
It is, especially with IVF. A lot of them I have a lot of people through IVF, who may have even had twins because, they've transferred 2 eggs and then they've lost that baby. But it's also lovely when I see that the ones that were lost they'll tell me that they've got a new sibling coming. And I've had a lot of clients who I've seen and I tell them there's a baby coming and they sort of look at me like, no, how do you know that? And then they'll ring me up later on and say, yes, we're pregnant, and yes, or they'll bring that little girl I was describing or little boy to come and see me. So that's really beautiful.
What would you say are some of your most profound predictions that you've made?
I think there was one thing that I did when I went under hypnosis, and I was doing it for a police case, but then I started to see that we were going to have some quite substantial changes to the earth here. And it was all, I don't know, about 5 years ago. It was when they had the Christchurch earthquake. I saw that. Then I saw Australia cut in two by water and floods. And then we had the really big flood, and then we had a really big cyclone. And it all happened within about a 6-month period. And it all came through hypnosis. The thing is, with these sorts of things, you can't stop those things. And the other thing was Japan. I saw the tsunami in Japan happening as well. So all of these quite world events were quite prevalent at that time.
When you look at the world now, do you feel as though we're in an unstable state?
Yeah, I don't feel very good about it at the moment. I think we need to be more mindful of each other. I think it's becoming a very selfish society, which is very sad. I do feel that, there is hope, but I think we're not looking after the earth very well at the moment. I think it's causing issues with food, and even ownership of countries and property in countries is becoming a problem as well. But then there's like, I call them the haves and the have-nots. So the haves there's a lot more haves as people having spiritual abilities, opening up and connecting to higher energies and being observant. But then there's a lot of people who are more concerned with their own wealth and self at the moment, which is a bit sad. But I feel, we have times that are positive in the world and then negative in the world. So I just hope that we all start to be a bit more mindful of each other. I think the devices are causing a lot of issues with people. We need to get out and speak to each other, communicate, and get out into nature and just feel that beautiful energy and clear the negativity. That would be great. We need to look back to the past in some ways and not just use devices to educate us. I think because in Sydney here a few weeks back there was a big storm and it knocked out a lot of power. People were just beside themselves. They didn't have power for a week because they just couldn't live without it. And I think we're reliant too much on those sorts of things now.
So if people out there want to build their psychic ability, do you have any advice for them how to really tune into their intuition and open up their clairvoyancy?
Yeah, I've written a book called Awaken Your Psychic Abilities because I feel that it was a time that people needed to sort of work more with it. But I think going with your gut feeling is the best thing. We all have what's called the psychic clair. So clairvoyance is clear seeing, but it doesn't mean you're going to see dead people all the time. You can utilise that. Or clairaudience is clear hearing. We do see signs and symbology. We might hear things. We might even think of a loved one, and then their favourite song comes on the radio. So that's a form of clairaudience. Clairaudience can come, through white noise. So, when you're a kid, you used to get a shell and put it in your ear and you'd hear that sound of the ocean, but it really wasn't the ocean, but that's white noise, but they can utilise that to come through. Clairsentience is clear feeling, so that's where we get a lot of our empathy, our gut feeling and inner knowings. And that's where a lot of people, they get that feeling of it feels right, it doesn't feel right. And then there's claircognizance, which is when we have a light bulb moment above our head that, you're thinking something and randomly the answer just pops in and you think, wow, where did that come from? Or sometimes you have an idea that's so random, you think, well, how did I think of that? So it can come through that way. But we all do have these abilities, and we even get signs and symbols from the universe. So we might be driving along and we get 1111 on our watch or on our number plate in front of us, or a sign from your angels sort of telling you that, you've got to be careful of what you're thinking because your thoughts are manifesting right now. It's also to let you know that they're there. Like through numerology, master numbers are divisible by 11. They only go up as high as 44 in the main kind of numerology, but 11s, 22s, 33s and 44s, that they're sort of signs that are around us. I mean, yes, with the angel numbers, they will go higher. But we do have all these things flashing at us all the time. And once you start to open up to them, it's almost like they're right in front of your face.
Yeah.
You might see a beautiful feather float by. And for me, that's when I feel a loved one or my angels are around me. Like I channel and write angel cards as well as working on murder cases. So my life's pretty quite diverse.
If we want to hear from someone who has passed, can we put the question out there? Is there a way to ask for signs?
Yeah, there is. You can actually think it in your mind. You don't have to ask them out loud. Sometimes looking at their photograph and sort of just focusing on their eyes, and you can think in your mind's eye, and ask for them to give you a sign, whether it might be a lady beetle, dragonfly, a butterfly. It could be, you might see a kookaburra in the tree and you think of your grandfather. It can be sometimes too, if someone's passing, it's a hard thing to do, but it's also a wonderful thing to sort of say, well, look, what are you going to do? What's your sign for me to let me know that you're safe on the other side when you get there? So sometimes it's good to have that little pact with them. But I think just being aware and open to things like rainbows can be a beautiful sign, even shooting stars. There's so many beautiful things the universe contains that are there for us to see, and they're all free, but sometimes we're too busy looking at our devices or too busy with our life to think about that these signs are right there available in front of us.
We're so distracted these days that we miss the special little moments that are there for us.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's I think sometimes we need to look up at the sky to see what beautiful things are above us. Sunsets, rainbows, stars, moon, full moons or moons, but also looking down as well, because, some of the most beautiful things are so tiny. Seeing a little ladybird in the garden or having a butterfly sitting on a flower can be gorgeous. Or even looking at like the dandelion seeds, that you look at one of those up close, it's actually like a little matrix in there, and it's just so beautiful. We just, we need to sort of pay more attention to the beauty that's around us.
Is there any messages coming through you now that you feel like you need to let our listeners know?
I think that this time of year can be quite a sad time of year for us, because a lot of the time we remember the beautiful loved ones that we had around us, and they may not be here with us for Christmas or the New Year. But the other thing that I want people to remember is that when we think of them and we're having joy, that they on the other side are having joy through us. So I think it's good to acknowledge them there and just think that you're all together, and you still have the love from this side to the other.
That's beautiful.
I'm Maritza Barone, and thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something really profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.